Okay, so this is a very impromptu, unplanned video. I wasn't planning on making this, but I just have some things I want to talk about concerning BookTok and children that I just feel like need to be spoken about. And you know what? I don't really care if anyone listens or not. I just need to get this off my chest because it bothers me a lot. If you're on BookTok, you know that a lot of the books that are recommended can be they are more like grown-up books. They can be very, very graphic in violence and also in sex. One book that's gone super viral lately is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and that book is very, very spicy, very smutty. They're having sex on like every other page. And the sheer amount of 10, 11, 12-year-olds that I have seen reading these books or commenting that they've read that book or saying that they've read it, saying that they got their hands on it way too young is so, so concerning to me. My sister's 14 and I can't imagine giving that to her now, let alone 2 years ago back when she was 12. I could not give her that book until she was at least 17. And it's not just that these kids are getting their hands on these books, like just accidentally. People are marketing these books towards children. I've seen Icebreaker in children's sections in bookstores. I've seen BookTok videos and BookTube videos recommending these books to little children. And I can't understand when as a society we decided to start giving these like books to children. I remember when I was younger, I was reading Famous Five, I was reading Gangster Granny, I was reading Black Beauty, Heidi, all of these sweet young children's books. And I only started reading more mature books when I was 14 or 15. Up until then, I was literally reading Famous Five. Like, if you look at my shelf up here, hold on. That's all I was reading. I was reading Matilda. I was reading Series of Unfortunate Events. I was reading good, clean books with good characters and like giving good examples and life lessons. And it seems to me now all that these young children are getting is just smut. And it has to have an effect on the brain reading these books so young. It can be incredibly traumatic. I know from personal experience. I remember, I think I was 10 or 11, and I got my hands on a book that I just shouldn't have had. I think it was in a school library or something. So even back then, there was already books in the library that shouldn't have been there. And it scarred me for months. I would have nightmares, I would cry. Like, it was deeply, deeply traumatic to me to read that at such a young age. And it should not have been in a place where I could get access to it easily. It shouldn't have been in a primary school. Like, why was that book in a primary school is my question. And on the shorts that I make, the like videos that I make all the time, I get thousands upon thousands of comments from children saying that there is this book that they read way too young, or this one scarred them, or they got nightmares from this one. And they're comments from like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds. These are babies, these are children that have been scarred and traumatized by these books. There is a huge gap in the market for books like aimed towards 10 to 14-year-olds, I think. They class all of these books under the umbrella YA. YA is for ages 13 to 18. Children of 13 should not be reading the same books as an 18-year-old, just as an 18-year-old isn't going to be reading the same books as a 13-year-old is reading. And then the books that would be more appropriate feel too childish when you're 13. Because when you're 13, you're not really reading Roald Dahl anymore, but you're also not reading Lauren Asher, are you? You're not supposed, that's not what you're supposed to be reading. It frustrates me so much. And BookTok just pushes these books on these young children. We have to remember, they're children. That is a child. That they're not fully developed. They have no concept of what any of this stuff in the books actually is. They have no real idea of what they're reading. They're just reading this pure smut, having no idea what any of it actually means. And now I don't know if I'm going to stretch this too far now, but it's almost like watching when you're a child. That has serious damaging effects on the brain. And people don't seem to realize that reading about sex in a book is just as traumatic as it is actually watching it. It sets unrealistic expectations of what those parts of your life are going to be like later on. Some of it is just like wrong. Like, it's just wrong. It's anatomically incorrect, or it's just it's just things that don't happen in real life. Like, these things that people have written, they don't happen. When you look up the effects of pornography on children, I'm just going to read it from my phone here quickly. According to many researchers, early exposure to pornography is connected to negative developmental outcomes, including a greater acceptance of sexual harassment, sexual activity at an early age, acceptance of negative attitudes to women, unrealistic expectations, skewed attitudes of gender roles. Here's my main point. Children's brains are not equipped to process the adult experiences depicted. Early exposure to pornography also increases the likelihood that depression and relationship problems develop. So then again, my question is, if pornography has such a drastic effect on children watching it, what are the effects of reading it? Does anyone actually know? So one can only assume that the effects of reading pornography is the same as watching it. Why do we protect our children so heavily against watching pornography on computers or iPads? We have all of these methods of keeping children away from these things that they shouldn't see, but none of it is the same with books, when in fact it's exactly the same thing. And I'm so sick of seeing books like Icebreaker. I keep bringing up Icebreaker, but that is the one that's gone the most viral. My sister is 14 now, and pretty much every girl in her class at this point has read Icebreaker, and she has asked me, what is this book actually about? Like, what is it? And I told her, it's literally just sex. That's all. That's what it is. It doesn't have a plot. It doesn't have another purpose other than to just be sex. And obviously I'm not going to let her read it, and she has no interest in reading it because she's reading stuff she actually should be reading, like the sweet, clean books that children should be reading. She's still a child. I haven't done a lot of research into what the effects on the brain can be, but I'm sure in like 10, 20 years, we're going to have stories coming out of children that have been traumatized by smutty books. However silly that may sound, it's going to happen. There is no way that you can read this stuff at the age of 10, 11 and it not have a dramatic effect on the way you view the world and the way your brain works. I think there's also a major problem with parents just buying books for their kids without even looking into them. When I was a child, my mum would thoroughly check every book before I read it to make sure I wasn't reading anything that I wasn't supposed to be reading, which I think is just a basic thing that every parent should be doing. But a kid will see a book on booktok and be like, Mom, I want that one. And the mom buys it, having no idea the kind of content that is in there. Another problem is the covers of books being made to look like they are for children. I remember when I was younger, my mom would read romance books. There would be like a naked man on the cover, or it would be like very plain, very boring. And you could tell that it was a grown-up book. Like, you could tell that this is a grown-up book, this is mom's grown-up book, I shouldn't touch this. This is not something that I should go near. This is mom's book. I'm going to put a picture of the cover of Icebreaker, that viral book, just somewhere here. It looks like a book that has been targeted towards children. It looks cute, it's colourful, it's cartoon, and parents will buy that thinking that it is a children's book when it's not. Any parents watching this, please, 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 make sure you know what your children are reading. Make sure that it is age appropriate, make sure that it's not graphic or anything, because you never know. There is absolutely nothing wrong with reading A Series of Unfortunate Events or enjoying The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. There is absolutely nothing wrong with reading books that are appropriate for your age, and you should never ever feel peer pressured or pressured by content on TikTok or YouTube, Instagram, anywhere, by your friends. You should never feel pressured to read something that makes you uncomfortable or scared. Stay reading your childhood books. There is always time to read smutty books and more graphic books when you're older. Please, 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 just check things before you read them. If you're 10 or 11, ask your parents to check these books before you buy them. Look up the trigger warnings, look up how graphic it is, look up age ratings. It needs to be done. Anyway, that's my little rant over. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry about this whole rant, I just feel it needed to be said, and I'll see you next time.